All right, guys. So in one of my last videos, I went over some basic business concepts, law of supply and demand, economics, whatnot. And basically, I was talking about why I think everyone should know a little bit about business because it allows you to understand the world a little bit better, as well as to understand people a little bit better, especially in a capitalistic society like we're living in now. So we're going to kind of flex that muscle a bit and put this to the test. And we're going to focus on a cartoon series that unfortunately is not canceled, it's in limbo, which is going to be the core of the video, known as Young Justice. And we're going to use this video as kind of like a dissection into some of the basic details of what's going on with it, why it's held up, why it's not necessarily canceled, but it's kind of silently canceled at the same time. So let's go ahead and dive into this and see what's going on with Young Justice. So for those who don't know, HBO had its own exclusive streaming service at one point. By the way, throughout this video, I'm going to call streaming services streamers. Apparently, that's an actual term. So when I say streamers, I'm talking about streaming services. So like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and all that stuff. But for those who don't know, HBO had their own streaming service at one point called HBO Max. At the top of the year, HBO and Discovery essentially merged their streaming platforms, Discovery Plus and HBO Max, and just became Max. In May of 2022, Warner Brothers announced that they were going to merge with Discovery and primarily, again, their Discovery Plus streaming platform to form a single streaming service or streamer. I'm not even following my own rule to create a single streamer where IPs or intellectual properties of both platforms would now belong on a single platform and it would be open for anyone to use. As a result of this merger, a new company was birthed called Warner Brothers Discovery. As of May of last year, that's when the new streamer Max officially launched and HBO Max was deprecated or cut off. It's no longer being used and it's obsolete. One of the key changes that we're going to talk about in this video is some of the personnel changes that happened as a result of the merger. Because when you merge two companies, or I guess two products from two different companies, it's not only like the logo and the face and the movies and shows that you can watch that are different, the people behind the scenes are different as well. So that's going to be the core of it, and we're going to use that to move forward with the video from this point on. Before we talk about the changes that Zaslav made, let's also bring up these two other important names from before the merger who later on were dismissed once the merger was complete. Prior to the merger, HBO Max was spearheaded and overseen or oversaw it by two main people, Bob Greenblatt, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, and Kevin Riley. Both men were responsible for, again, overseeing the operations of HBO Max, as well as responsible for the production of the streamer, aka the shows. They got to choose which shows and movies would be put on the streamer, which shows would they create or push forward for more seasons for the streamer, and which ones would they essentially just kind of do. But somewhere in 2022, there was a slew of cancellations from HBO Max. Just so many different shows and movies, well, more so shows, were canceled, certain plans were dropped, things like that. Here's what led to that, or what happened as a result of that. So again, at the top of 2024, there was a slew of cancellations after the merger. And the merger came as a result of David Zaslav deciding, once Greenblatt and Riley, respectively, were dismissed from the company post-merger, David made a promise to the new board of directors for Warner Brothers Discovery to save about $35 billion within about a year, if I remember correctly. And one of these shows that, again, has not been formally canceled. As of today, it's April 4th, April 6th. So as of today, April 6th, you can Google it. I'm pretty sure you'll still see that Young Justice has not actually been canceled and has been confirmed by the creator of the show apparently a handful of times via social media more than anything that Young Justice has not been canceled. So the question becomes, well, why have we not gotten a season 5 of Young Justice yet? Especially with the cliffhanger of what happened in the last season. And supposedly what's possibly supposed to happen, maybe, with Wally and his disappearance in season 3, I believe it, 2, 3? Whichever one after Impulse showed up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was season 2. Pretty sure it was season 2. After season 2 with Wally and people still thinking he's supposed to come back because he's not unalived, he's in the Speed Force somewhere. Between a few different elements as well as the scattered style of season 4's approach to telling the story and getting to the overall theme of the season, a lot of people felt like there's just a lot of things that are incomplete. But first and foremost, let me rewind. For those who don't know what Young Justice is, Young Justice is essentially a show about the mini Justice League or the Younger Justice League. It's a show that focuses on the sidekicks of the bigger DC superheroes. So you got Superman, then you should know Superboy. You got Batman, you definitely should know Robin. You got Wonder Woman. I don't know if people know there's a Wonder Girl. I know I didn't, for a while. You got the multiple Green Lanterns from Earth, not including the I think twoest new ones. There's another black guy. Um, I forget his name, and then there's a Latina woman as well that got selected at some point in the comics. They haven't gotten there yet. I don't know if they will. Well, we don't know if they're even going to pick up the show at some point, but you know what I'm saying? Like the big DC heroes, Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman. Um, they bring Icon into it. They do eventually bring Static Shock into it, even though he's a teenager. Icon's an adult. Rocket, which Rocket, by the way, for those who don't know, Icon and Rocket are an actual duo from the Icon comics. I forget the name of the company that owned them initially before they were purchased or like merged with DC. But the Flash, Zatara, the list goes on. If you know the big DC superhero names, then you know their sidekicks. So with Batman, of course, you got multiple Robins. You start off with Dick Grayson. He eventually becomes Nightwing. You got Tim Drake that becomes Robin. Jason Todd, they include that into the show. You got Superboy, but his background is a little different. And he has multiple origin stories, of course, but his background is different depending on what version of the comics you looked at. They got Wonder Girl. They got Blue Beetle as a teenager in there, for those who know Blue Beetle. Yeah. So it focuses on the younger heroes of the DC universe and pays special attention to their missions where they function as a covert ops team. Because they're young and they're not adults, they don't need to be in the public eye. So they handle missions mainly at nighttime and in the dark, and they're pretty low key. While the Justice League, the big heroes, are the ones that handle everything in the daytime, and they leave it at that. So back in the Greenblatt and Riley era, apparently they had an intention to increase the amount of family-friendly shows on HBO Max before the merger. Now, obviously, the company wasn't going to put their own money to it, and chances are they didn't necessarily have a whole lot of funds dedicated strictly to HBO Max. So what ended up happening was, because of all the shows that they had greenlit together and they were intending on producing and putting onto the platform, HBO Max ended up gaining billions of dollars in debt. In other words, Warner Brothers was hemorrhaging money. When you say you're hemorrhaging, I don't remember if I've covered this. If you say that you're hemorrhaging, like you're bleeding, you're saying you're bleeding profusely. When someone's like you're hemorrhaging blood, or like a brain hemorrhage and a hemorrhage somewhere in your body, they're saying that that part of your body is bleeding a lot, like just a lot. When you're saying that they were hemorrhaging money, you're saying that they were bleeding or losing a lot of money quick. Enter the new CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav. Post-merger, David stepped in, and because of his position as CEO, he made a promise to, I believe it was a new board of directors of the company, saying that he's going to make it a point to save, I believe it's about $35 billion within the first year of Max being in operation and with Warner Brothers Discovery being in operation, to slow down, if not fully stop, the money that they're consistently losing because of the debt that Greenblatt and Riley took on for those shows that we're not even going to see. Some of the IPs that they're going to remove from the Max platform include, there's a new show, or it was a newer show by Issa Rae called Rap-ish. I can't say that. Rap-ish, Westworld. I think they're even going to remove the Aquaman movies. Minx, Love Life. Those are just a handful of some of the movies and shows and IPs that they're going to remove from the platform. Even the Max produced, like the ones that they produced in-house, they're also going to remove some of those to save money as well. The whole thing with removing the stuff that they produce themselves, it's not that they don't pay for it, and it's not that they can't go into debt by producing shows in-house. Is that it usually, for one, if it's an original show, meaning like the entire concept is brand new and produced in-house, they save money because they're not licensing, like say DC Comics material and saying, hey, let us exclusively put DC related like movies and things on our platform, and essentially borrowing their concept. They can create their own concept in-house. It just won't cost as much to, go through with producing it and putting it on the platform and maintaining it. It's not as expensive, but it can still be expensive. So that's why even the stuff that Max produced in-house, some of those things are getting rid of, in addition to the other IPs that they borrowed from other places, which most likely are bigger bills than the stuff they created in-house. Now back to the point. if Young Justice isn't canceled, then what exactly is going on with it and why is it in limbo? So I did some double checking because I'm like, even with the critical acclaim, or well, rather the kind of decline in the acclaim of the show, to be honest, with season 4, the viewership was still good. Like numbers wise, viewership was not a problem, or at least that's what I thought. So I double checked it, and that was the case. I didn't find clear answers on why they left it in limbo. Apparently, they're just waiting for it to get picked up, and they'll get back to work, if and whenever that happens. But here are a few guesses I have as to why Young Justice is sitting in limbo and has not been officially canceled, but might be silently canceled. And even if it's not silently canceled, it's kind of just chilling there. Now, according to viewers, again, the numbers in terms of viewership were great. They didn't really change throughout the entirety of the season, like even or the show after it came back. But there is a pretty clear consensus that season 4, the last season before it just stopped, that the quality of the show did decline noticeably. And from some of the votes that I saw from other viewers on different websites, season 4 had some of the lowest votes in the entire series. It actually had the lowest, like a few of the, like I think the 3 lowest votes in terms of like viewers and their opinion on the show. Season 4 had some of the worst times. It had some great times too that was above average, but it also had like definitively the worst moments of the show by far. And depending how you look at that, you can see that as the beginning of a downward trend for Young Justice, where people were getting disinterested. I know I wasn't caring for the woke subject matter. Like some of the political correctness of it, I just was not crazy about it. It seemed like it was taken away from the whole point of it being like superheroes and young heroes kind of growing up, developing to their own thing. And it just started going to other areas that, granted, are human. And I actually did learn some stuff because of primarily like Halo's arc when she decided to be non-binary. And I did learn from that clip. But in general, season 4 in particular was just moving so away from, or at least incorporated maybe a bit too much of the wokeness when it comes to that stuff. And it just took away from the quality of the show. And that's something that most people tend to agree on if you look over just social media and do a little bit of research. A lot of people were kind of weren't feeling that as well. So that's where you can see potentially the start of a downward trend for Young Justice. But numbers wise, it definitely still deserved a season 5. So the reason that I didn't get a season 5, or one of the contributing reasons, this was actually definitive. I found this. They actually didn't plan on making a season 5 to begin with, but it still performed well enough to do that. So that still raises the question, why are we not getting Young Justice season 5, or at least why haven't we gotten one yet? I can think of 2 main reasons. One is not the right time financially speaking. David Zaslav, like I said, made a promise to his board of directors when he took over the new company, Warner Brothers Discovery, to save a certain amount of money, I believe, within the first year. And if I remember correctly, it was $35 billion. I was wrong. It was $3.5 billion. So because Dave made a promise, and or at least has been assigned the responsibility to the investors of the company to save that much within the first year or just any limited amount of time right after the merger, he is closing up a lot of things, from the Greenblatt and Riley era to trying to produce new shows, maybe just expand on the ones that currently are already on the platform and doing very well and are still in the good graces of its viewers. But he's not trying to take on additional debt because of how much money HBO or Warner Brothers was losing prior to the merger, and now it's become his job explicitly to stop that, basically. The benefit to this is that it leaves a little room to believe that the show can, and hopefully will, be picked up later on in the future when the company is in better financial shape. And here's my second reason. I don't think this is likely, but because, like I said earlier, season 4, in terms of quality and what fans thought, myself included, it was just kind of going downhill. But numbers-wise, it was doing good, but quality, a lot of us felt like it just was not there. So with number 2, we may not see the show again. Because, again, depending on how you look at it, it was starting to deteriorate with, one, their approach to season 4 and the different character focuses, like mini arcs that they had, which was kind of just annoying and some were better than others. 2, it lacked focus, it seemed. Like, I have a hard time understanding how most of those mini character arcs ultimately tied into the Superboy thing at the end, where it all paid off. It seemed like everyone was kind of just going on their own mini adventures. Some things alluded to Superboy's demise, and were more direct when it comes to like rectifying that, which they ultimately did at the end of the season. But then other things seem like they happened just cuz like they didn't like Zatanna's little mini arc, Zatara, the girl, the daughter. Um yeah, it seemed like her whole story didn't necessarily have anything to do with anything in the grand scheme of the season, mainly when it relates to Superboy and him being trapped in the Phantom Zone and them ultimately getting him out. So yeah, well, no, even Aqualad's Aquaman, the new Aquaman, but Aqualad's mini arc, which I believe his was the last one. Um, yeah, I think his was the last one before they ultimately settled like on the Superboy thing. It just didn't connect. That's the bottom line. It just didn't connect. Their focus was all over the place. The execution was not that great. Each character had their own little, I guess, mini moments. Some were better than others. Maybe a couple of them actually had something to do with the grander scheme of the season, mainly as it relates to Superboy not actually being unalived. But I would say most of them, it didn't have anything directly to do with this. So it's like, why are y'all doing this? And what are we supposed to pull from this? You know? Then on top of that, y'all created too many teams. You got Beast Boy's team and his depressive situation. You got the original team, the updated one. Then you got Batman's group, which technically is doing their own thing, but they still kind of get some screen time just a tad. It becomes too many, just too widespread. So we may not see the show again because, yeah, the numbers checked out, but the way that season 4 happened was just not good, in my opinion, overall, when it comes down to it. It definitely had its highlights, but I rewatched it last week or maybe the week before, very recently, multiple times. I actually rewatched the entire series. Yeah, season 4, I can't even stand to pay too much attention because there's so much going on. And again, there were plot points from previous seasons, mainly with Wally, but there were plot points from previous seasons we still haven't seen pan out. Were we ever going to see what was supposed to happen with Darkseid and Vandal Savage and their supposed like partnership? Like, what was that supposed to be? And we haven't seen anything of that. And it doesn't look like they were. I don't think they even referenced it anywhere in season 4. Now that I think about it, so all these scattered plot points, all these things that you left incomplete, we can take it that we may not see the show again because even if the numbers justify it, even if Warner Brothers Discovery was to get in good financial shape and wanted to put the show back out there, where exactly are they going with this, right? The most I would like to see is Young Justice to last for maybe 6 seasons total. After that, I just don't see what sense it would make for them to keep the show going. And a key detail in that is the length of the time skips they keep on taking. They keep taking time skips between each season where the time skip is like 2-3 years long. I think the longest time skip was like 5 years long, maybe. But they keep jumping forward like a handful of years. So again, it just leaves too much in the air. And then it gets to a point where it's like, ultimately, what is y'all's goal here? And when you take the time skips into consideration, I just don't see them lasting another 2 seasons if it was to get picked back up. Because if they keep on with that trend of the time skips, then that means season 5 would probably take place, who knows, 2-3 years after season 4. And if there was to be a season 6, if they was to wrap it up, season 6 will probably take place 2, 3, 4, 5 years after season 5. It's weird, and it would be weird for them to all of a sudden like cut that, at the end of the show when that's what they've been relying on this whole time. So yeah, I don't know. I think we have a higher chance of seeing it again at some point, which I'm hoping for. But if we don't see it again, let's just be honest, or at least my personal opinion, we have all the reason in the world to believe we're not going to see that show again if they make that choice. Which it sucks, but yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave the video here, guys. If you have any feedback for me, go ahead and leave that for me in the comment section below. Also, any video suggestions? Do you like this type of video talking about Young Justice? Are there other shows kind of in the same vein that you want me to look into? Go ahead and let me know, and I'll go ahead and look into that later. Until next time, guys, see you.